It was a long time ago, but it's wrong what they say about the past, about how you can bury it. The Soviet Union had been providing Afghanistan with military training materials and training grounds since 1955. On July 17, 1973, King Zahir Shah was overthrown by Mohammad Daoud Khan, the former Afghan Prime Minister. Using the resources provided by the Soviet Union, Kabul awoke the next morning to find that the monarchy was a thing of the past. There was also a group in Afghanistan known as the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, or PDPA. They are pro-Soviet, but they later split up into two groups, the Kala and the Parkam. Even with some internal conflict, the PDPA overthrew the monarchy once again in April 1978. The Soviets took advantage of this political instability. Upon invasion, they imposed extensive social reform, at which a sense of rejuvenation and purpose swept across the land. However, it was enforced by mass arrests, torture, executions, and bombings. To counter this, the Afghans and Pakistanis worked together to train guerrilla fighters, the Mujahideen, who were able to resist the Soviets. On December 25, 1979, 30,000 Soviet troops invaded Kabul with orders to overthrow Hafizullah Amin, the deputy minister, and Babrak Karmal. Karmal, supported by the Parkamists and Soviets, wanted to create a new state. Any rebellion was silenced by bombing the area. From Amir's perspective, in the Kite Runner, the shootings and explosions had frightened us badly because none of us had ever heard gunshots in the streets.
By 1982, 2.8 million Afghan refugees sought asylum in Pakistan. 1.5 million went to Iran. The Soviets had lost around 15,000 people at this time. In 1988, the United States, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Soviet Union signed an agreement. The Soviets agreed to withdraw their troops, completed in February of 1989, and Afghanistan returned to a non-aligned status. The communist president, Mohammad Najibullah, who had succeeded Karmal 6 years earlier, was overthrown by rebels in April of 1992. Rahim Khan told me how, when the Northern Alliance took over Kabul between 1992 and 1996, different factions claimed different parts of Kabul. He said, "You practically needed a visa to go from one neighborhood to the other, so people just stayed put, prayed the next rocket wouldn't hit their house." He told me how people knocked holes in the walls of their homes so they could bypass the dangerous streets and would move down the block from hole to hole. In other parts, people moved about in underground tunnels. The infighting between the factions was fierce, and no one knew if they would live to see the end of the day. The Taliban, led by Mohammed Omar, emerged in the fall of 1994, seizing full control of Kabul by 1996. Rahim Khan said, "When the Taliban rolled in and kicked the alliance out of Kabul, I actually danced on the street. And believe me, I wasn't alone. People were celebrating, greeting the Taliban in the streets, climbing their tanks, and posing for pictures with them. People were so tired of the constant fighting, tired of the rockets, the gunfire, the explosions. The alliance did more damage to Kabul than the Shorowi. The Taliban gained control of almost all of Afghanistan, except a small portion in the north, which was still held by a loose coalition of Mujahideen forces known as the Northern Alliance." In a letter to Amir, Hassan wrote, "Alas, the Afghanistan of our youth is long dead. Kindness is gone from the land, and you cannot escape the killings. In Kabul, fear is everywhere, in the streets, in the stadium, in the markets. It is part of our lives here." In 2001, the United States demanded the Taliban to hand over al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, who had been exiled from Saudi Arabia. The Taliban refused. The United States allied with the Northern Alliance in order to take down the Taliban, which was achieved in early December 2001. The invasion of Afghanistan had serious consequences. A total of 6 million Afghans became refugees by the late 1980s, and 1.5 million Afghans had been killed by 1992. Of those 1.5 million, 10,000 died from starvation and disease, 100,000 were killed by landmines, thousands were killed by factional fighting, and thousands more were executed by tribal, ethnic, or religious groups. A large number of deaths were also caused by the United States offensive forces.